I'm going to start this video on a positive note because a positive thing did happen for the Warriors tonight, and that's getting a win against the Grizzlies and making it into the playoffs as the 7th seed. That is the positive thing for the Warriors. And Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler were absolute heroes in this game. Just completely unreal. Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry, these two guys took turns being Batman in this game. And I would basically call them co-MVPs for what they were able to do together. Jimmy Butler, other than missing 6 free throws, he went to the free throw line 18 times in this game. 18 free throws for a Warriors player is truly unreal, but this guy knows how to get to the cup and he knows how to draw contact. But yes, other than shooting 66% from the free throw line while getting there 18 times, Butler was just about flawless in every sense of the word. 12 of 20 from the field, 38 points. Warriors fans have been wanting to see Jimmy Butler be more aggressive ever since he joined the team. And when it actually and truly matters, Jimmy Butler is completely and utterly reliable. He truly is Batman next to Steph Curry, and that is simply unreal. The Warriors are beyond blessed to have this guy on their roster right now. We have got to give major credit to Mike Dunleavy for bringing this guy on board despite the money that he wanted. Oh, this guy wants $60 million per year. How is he worth that? He just showed you. He just showed all of us. So major credit to Mike Dunleavy for this move. As for Steph Curry, this was not an easy game for him. He was struggling. He is still dealing with a sprained thumb in his shooting hand, and his shot was coming and going, but from an all-around standpoint, 37-year-old point guard, 6'2", 37 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, incredible on the defensive end of the floor, incredible at getting to the loose balls, getting to the rebounds. And then of course, we know that ultimately the Warriors got away with this game because of those 2 incredibly clutch 3-point shots that he hit in succession in the final 2 minutes of the game. And his ability to handle the ball under pressure in the final seconds of the game is also highly underrated. He did get to the free throw line 13 times in this game. And yes, he absolutely got fouled in every single one of them. And a bunch of fouls were not called. Still, he's getting grabbed off the ball left and right multiple times in a single possession. I mean, you watch this play right here, Scottie Pippen Jr., and what he's allowed to get away with when it comes to guarding Steph Curry is simply unreal. And through all of that, through all the adversity, look at Steph Curry. 37 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 6 of 13 from the 3-point line. Those shots that he hit, it just simply cannot be quantified from looking at the stat sheet. Steph Curry in this game overcame complete and utter nonsense by Steve Kerr once again. Steve Kerr is reverting completely back to his old self in terms of completely unreliable rotations, nonsensical rotations, and he's trying to figure it out on the fly instead of having had figured it all out. You had 82 games to figure out your rotations, and you're still trying to figure it out with everything on the line. We're going to get to a lot of the details of that in this video. But before we do get to that, we have to talk about referees, the NBA referees and the NBA itself for the crimes that they committed in this game. And before we do that, if you haven't already, and if you like what you've heard so far, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that like button so that this video gets out to all the Warriors fans out there and all the fans out there in general now that it's playoff time. Now, the whole world is gonna want to see the breakdown of these games. So let's get straight to it. Obviously, you guys know, following this channel, I have covered multiple games this season where Steph Curry and the Warriors have been blatantly cheated by the NBA referees. Mitchell Irvin and James Williams are 2 specific guys. Whenever they're on Warriors games, they cheat the Warriors without fail, and it's always on national television. Always. And somehow, some way or another, they always get away with it. It is absolutely disgusting. I mean, we know that the NBA is rigged to an extent, but to do it this blatantly, what Josh Tiven was doing in this game, especially in that 4th quarter, oh my God. To do what he did with everything on the line for the Warriors. I mean, this game determines whether the Warriors are going to be the 7th seed or they're going to have to fight for the 8th seed. And this guy is literally doing it to our faces. And he's blatantly calling non-existent fouls. He's doing anything and everything that he can think of to give the Grizzlies an opportunity to steal this game. It starts with a foul call against Draymond Green. They call the foul on Draymond for boxing out Zach Edey. And Draymond, before even looking at the replay, immediately is calling for a challenge because he knows he's not the one that committed a foul on this play. Take a look at this play and you'll see that it is literally Zach Edey, who puts his hand on Draymond's shoulder, and he's the one who fouled Draymond, and he should have been fouled out of the game because he had 5 fouls at that point. So Steve Kerr also takes a look at the Jumbotron and sees that Draymond did not commit a foul, so he makes a challenge, and this should be an easy call, a reversal call in favor of the Warriors. And everybody is assuming that it's going to get overturned. And then Josh Tibbin announces that Draymond still has the foul because it was a foul on Draymond. And then he ends up picking up his 5th foul. I mean, to make that call out of a challenge is simply unreal. And that was a really, really egregious false call on the ref. But there's a lot more to come. So the game is coming down to the wire. The Warriors need to execute and get stops. Steph Curry sets a screen for Jimmy Butler, but then he gets ragdolled to the ground. So he's on the ground. Jimmy Butler is driving, and then he kicks it out to Steph Curry, not realizing that Steph Curry has hit the floor. I mean, this is absolutely an off-the-ball foul. You can't just toss the screener to the ground like this. But of course, no call. The Grizzlies are out in transition. Scottie Pippen Jr. is going to the basket. Potts is running back on defense, and he jumps cleanly with no contact on Scottie Pippen Jr. and times the layup perfectly and ends up blocking Scottie Pippen Jr.'s layup attempt. That was a truly gutsy defensive moment for Pods. For everything he wasn't able to do in this game, for that insane turnover in the final 3 minutes of the game when it matters the most, in the closing minutes where he shouldn't have been in the game, he made this incredible defensive stop. But guess what? The refs cheated Pods and the Warriors by calling a complete and utter phantom foul on Pods on what should have been an incredible defensive play, a highlight play. And the Warriors cannot challenge this blatantly cheating call because they already used their challenge on that Draymond foul. They should have had a second challenge because that should have been a successful challenge on Draymond. And instead of the Warriors going back on offense, the Grizzlies end up getting 2 free throws, 2 completely undeserved free throws. And if that wasn't enough, another critical moment in the final minutes of the game where Looney is fighting against Zach Edey for a rebound, and there is no foul. There is no foul. It is standard rebounding. Zach Edey is able to touch the ball, but he ends up losing it to Moses Moody. And then there's a call, and the Warriors are like, what's going on? And it turns out the ref called a foul on Kevon Looney so that the ball goes back to the Grizzlies. And because the Warriors were over the foul limit, Zach Edey ends up getting 2 free throws out of it on a rebound. So that's not 1, not 2, but 3 phantom foul calls against the Warriors. 1 blatant cheating call is more than enough in a one-off play-in game. 2, now somebody needs to be investigated for real. The NBA has to act on this and they have to make it public. 3, now somebody needs to lose their job. There is no way this Josh Tibbin guy should ref another NBA game ever again. This is some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. I've just never seen such blatant cheating to everybody's faces. We have eyes. We can see what's going on. And you know what the absolute worst thing about this is? Everybody's going to end up forgetting about this, and the NBA is not going to address this. The Warriors, Steve Kerr and the Warriors, need to send the film to the league and tell them to investigate this situation. Like, do we understand the level of seriousness here? This kind of blatant cheating, you can go to jail for this kind of blatant cheating. And you know that 5-second call the Memphis Grizzlies ended up committing? I want you to take a look at this, and I want you to look at the clock, and I want you to count yourself, and I want you to see if this is actually 5 seconds here. Because Josh Tibbin is going like this to count how many seconds are going by, but look at the amount of time that he gives the Grizzlies before he ends up having no choice but to call the 5-second call. For the Warriors to have to overcome this much cheating in the 4th quarter alone, this level of rigging, the NBA, obviously they are in cahoots with Nike because they are in business with Nike. All the players are literally wearing Nike jerseys, and it's like Nike has a hit out for Steph Curry. You see players blatantly getting too many calls, but you don't see the refs blatantly making up phantom foul calls, multiples of them within minutes of each other, to ensure that the Warriors have a shot at losing this game when they should have been able to close it up. Oh, this is just devastating, man. You can only imagine how bad it's going to get once they or if they end up getting to the Lakers. The Warriors are going to have to go through this cheating by the NBA every single round. And I don't have much confidence that they can overcome it. Usually when the Warriors are so good and the rotations are so good and the pieces completely make sense for this team, I am confident that they can overcome the cheating of the referees. But after watching all the things things that Steve Kerr did in this game, I have no trust that the Warriors are going to be able to get this done this season. So now we actually get to the nuances of what happened in this game and all the things that Steve Kerr fumbled on to put the Warriors in the situation that they were in. They should not have been in this situation, but they're always in this situation in these clutch minutes because of the non-viable lineups that Steve Kerr keeps throwing out there, because of the non-viable players that he keeps throwing out there over players who are completely and obviously more viable. And you know what I'm talking about. Let's start with Buddy Hield. First of all, I want you guys to take a look at this. Buddy Hield has played 10 years in the NBA. Now I want you to take a look at what he did once he got into the playoffs. The one time in his career. Yeah, do you see that? Buddy Hield is not a real player that you use in rotation to try to compete for anything with. He's low IQ, undersized, not good enough defensively, will look off Steph Curry to take his own shots. There's a ton of lineups that end up breaking because he's masquerading as a small forward, which he never has been. And the thing that he's supposed to be the best at, the three-point shot, he can't hit the side of a barn when faced against real competition, when faced against real adversity. And we have seen this over and over and over and over again throughout the course of this season. And that is why, for those of you that have been following me all along, before the trade deadline, what did I say? I said they need to trade Buddy Hield at all costs. At all costs, because he's not usable in these situations. And you're seeing it before your eyes right now. Against the Clippers, you saw it. Against the Spurs, you saw it. And for the Warriors front office to not have enough recognition to understand that this is not the guy that they need to get into the playoffs with is completely incompetent. Complete and utter incompetence. And worst of all, Steve Kerr loves him. So you know, no matter how badly Buddy Hield plays, Steve Kerr is going to continue to stick him in the rotation and act like he's some kind of viable player for this team. And then of course there's the fact that Steve Kerr continues to give Buddy Hield more minutes no matter how much Guy Santos outplays him, no matter how much more impact he shows from a defensive standpoint, from a rebounding standpoint, from a connectivity standpoint, from the standpoint of their ability to play smaller lineups because he completes that Draymond and Butler lineup. The fact that he plays really well next to Steph Curry. The fact that he's a positive next to everybody on this team. The fact that before this game started, Steve Kerr actually said that he feels like they needed Guy Santos in the previous game. Well, why didn't you play him? You're the guy who decides whether somebody's going to play or not for this team. And yet you sat there and stood there just letting Buddy Hield get all the minutes instead. And you're playing tiny, non-viable lineups, and then you end up losing to the Clippers. And then you end up in this crazy situation where you're playing to the final second against the Grizzlies in the play-in. Steve Kerr is absolutely disgusting. This guy is vile. And this guy, the level of incompetence is completely unreal. I mean, the guy keeps making the same errors over and over and over again, year after year after year. He did it against the Kings and the Lakers in the playoffs. He did it for a chunk of last season. He did it for a chunk of this season, and he did it when it mattered the most at the end of this season that forced his team into the play-in. He did it against world competition where he failed to medal because he's playing a 5-guard lineup. And no matter how many bad things have happened and no matter how many times he's failed, he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. There were so many non-viable combinations used tonight. I mean, I'm just sitting here sad. You look at that second quarter, it's absolute comedy how he closed that quarter. He starts with the Steph Curry, GP2, and Buddy Hield lineup, and Buddy Hield is just stinking up the court. And then eventually it gets bad enough where he decides, okay, I'm going to stick Potts in there now. Except now, you're once again going to a 3-guard lineup of Steph Curry, Potts, and GP2. Not good enough. And somehow, somewhere or another, Steve was like, okay, yeah, I don't see it either. So then he sits down GP2, and then Moses Moody comes in, and now you have that stupid starting lineup again that failed this team both in the first quarter and the third quarter. That starting lineup is losing to every single playoff caliber team. And it happened again in tonight's game as well. Steph Curry, Potts, Moody, starting lineup is non-viable. So Steve plays that for a little bit and then decides that again, that's not good enough. So then he ends up replacing Potts with Post. And at least that's a palatable lineup from a size standpoint. You got Steph Curry, Moody, Butler, Draymond, and Post. Do you see the comedy of how he ended up closing that second quarter? The guy is literally experimenting in the play-in because this is not working, and this is not working. And hilariously enough, it's every single lineup that I told you guys game after game after game after game that it's not gonna work come playoffs against real teams. Playoffs or play-in. It's not gonna be good enough. And it wasn't good enough, which is why they had like a 20-point lead in that first half that evaporated really fast. Kerr is putting out a bunch of lineups that can't hold up well enough defensively, and it's like, Pods, what did he do offensively tonight? Nothing! So if it's not working on offense anyway, at least bolster up your defense. And you guys may remember, throughout the course of this season, I'm talking about Pods, Moody, these guys, and these small lineups. And I'm just like, this is going to be unserious when it comes to the playoffs and they face real competition, real size, and real veterans. Fair play to Pods, he's had some really great moments, especially down the stretch of the season before cooling off. But at the end of the day, he is an inexperienced second-year player, net neutral, probably from a defensive standpoint. I mean, he's not POAing anybody. Everybody just blows by him. Desmond Bane roughly outplayed Pods by like 5 times in this game. You see why that's not good enough to rely on the further the Warriors are going to be able to get in the playoffs? And the inconsistency of Moses Moody is not that far off. So you're talking about 2 different players that are pretty incomplete in terms of trying to compete for a title with these two. And both of them are in the starting lineup. You see, when I break these things down throughout the course of the regular season, game after game after game, this moment is what I'm breaking it down for. I'm always looking at the big picture and seeing which lineups are going to be viable and the most viable come playoffs. I'm not looking at it from just that game standpoint and then that game standpoint and then that game standpoint. I'm looking at the overall picture and the overall viability of their defensive units and how viable those units are. And to me, Guy Santos is more important than either of those guys. That shooting guard spot can be replaced literally by GP2. Sometimes it can be Moody, sometimes it can be Pods. But you know what? When the Warriors decide to go with small ball, Guy Santos has to be one of the forwards. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Moses Moody is not a better forward than Guy Santos. Buddy Hield, forget about it. Pods is not even a forward. If you're gonna go with a small lineup, you need a lot of versatility, you need a lot of switchability, and you need a lot of overall size within the context of being small. You just can't be tiny and not cover the basics of defense, not cover the basics of rebounding, not cover the basics of overall size, and then go with a lineup that equals the size of a high school team. And these are the things that Steve Kerr is doing with everything on the line. And he's been doing it with everything on the line. It's a complete and utter joke. At least now he has 7 games to figure it out. We'll see what happens with that. The one thing he continues to get right is the fact that Jonathan Kuminga doesn't belong on this team. Once again, he was nowhere to be found. And that's the way they need to go about this situation. But at the same time, if you're going to be missing Jonathan Kuminga, you need to match his size with Guy Santos. He can't be playing 6 minutes in this game. Why is Buddy Hield doubling Guy Santos in minutes in this game? What warranted him to be out on the floor for as long as he did? He's doing nothing out there. His personal love and affection for Buddy Hield will be the death of this team. Now, the first 2 guys that came off the bench in this game were GP2 and Post. And Post in the first half did a really good job. He ended up being a plus 17-18 in that first half, hit 3 3-point shots, and those are big shots. And it was part of the reason why the Warriors got out to an early lead. And the Grizzlies really weren't attacking them nearly enough, so the Warriors were able to get away with some of the lineups. Where for me personally, in the second half of the game, when things get more tense, more tight, the defense becomes better, and the offense becomes more target-oriented. And when those things happen, Quinton Post is almost completely unreliable. You are completely and utterly gambling the game. It's like a 3-4 point game, and you're gonna allow in the fourth quarter plays like this to develop? I mean, take a look at this play and take a wild guess what happened here. I mean, literally, you might as well put a cone out there. This is a gamble that you can't take, and this is why you have to go with a more defensively capable guy in Trayce Jackson-Davis over Quinton Post when you actually get into the series against the Rockets. Because in that environment, Post is not going to be able to get the shots that he's going to want to get, which is the wide open variety. Unless he's wide open and catching a pass from Jimmy Butler, he's not getting an opportunity to shoot the ball. And if he's not going to get the proper opportunity to shoot the ball, he shouldn't be out there. plain and simple. And is that Quinten Post's fault? Of course not. Quinten Post did everything in his power to give the team everything he can in the minutes that he was given. But every time defensively, especially in the second half, in the fourth quarter, you basically have to hold your breath every time he's out there and he has to play defense in a pick and roll situation. Those are the types of gambles that a serious team does not take. Yeah, in that fourth quarter, Draymond gets into foul trouble. Steve has to go to a different guy and he chooses Quinten Post. He's out of his mind. You have to put out defensive lineups that can be trusted to close a game in the fourth quarter. Not a gamble where you have to hold your breath because the guy can be scored on at any juncture of the possessions that he's out there for. And these combinations that were working in that first half was not working in the second half. That third quarter, the Warriors got completely outplayed 36-27. Look at this lineup out here. Buddy Hield, Potts, and Quinten Post on the floor at the same time. I mean, this would be a completely different lineup if you had Guy Santos in there instead of Buddy Hield. And the idea of Buddy Hield minutes would be more palatable if you had Guy Santos in here instead of Potts. Then you have Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Santos, and Post. And that's much bigger and much more imposing overall. And the same thing if you just sat Buddy Hield and it's Potts, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, Guy Santos, and Post. That again is much more imposing than the lineup that you're seeing right here, right now. I mean, just so many bad moves in that third quarter. I was losing my mind. At some point, he had Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, GP2, Draymond, and Post on the floor at the same time. Why is Draymond on the floor when he has to be vulnerable? Because he has 4 fouls. He shouldn't be in the game. Guy Santos should be in this game. And Quinten Post shouldn't be playing the minutes with Steph Curry. It should be Loon in there to bolster their defense. You got Post and Hield who are unserious on defense next to Steph Curry. And Draymond has to play timid because he's in foul trouble. Why wouldn't you just stick Guy Santos in there? You got 3 guys on the floor right now that are vulnerable on defense. It doesn't make any sense. And then again in the final 6 minutes of the game or so, Steve is electing to go once again with a small lineup, Steph Curry, GP2, Moses Moody, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond. And that's not good enough. It's not big enough. You are incomplete from a basic fundamental defensive standpoint with that unit. You're gambling the game. It doesn't matter if the Warriors are able to score because you're giving it right back. Every iteration of the Warriors when they were title contenders always had reliable closing lineups, lineups that can be trusted, and you don't have to send a help every single time down because there's at least 2 guys on the floor that needs help. It's unserious basketball, and that's why you saw this game dwindling down to what it was. And then in the final 3 minutes of the game, Steve Kerr elects to bring back Potts into the game. He's done nothing. And you're electing to go with the small lineup that almost never works for this team when you try to close with them? It's unserious. It's completely unserious. You're gambling. You're gambling. Anything can happen. There's no assurance that the Warriors are going to get the job done. And when you put out lineups like this, you can lose to any team. Forget the playoffs. You can lose to some of the worst teams in the league. You can lose to the Spurs. You can lose to the Jazz. You can lose to the 76ers. You can lose to any team in the league when you put out lineups that are gambling with your defense. You know, the win itself is so satisfying. Yet the entire process was completely unsatisfying because I know for a fact that this is not a real way for the Warriors to try to contend for a title. It is not real. And the fact that this coaching staff, Steve freaking Kerr, cannot recognize it enough is absolutely disgusting. Look, they solved one single problem, and that is Jonathan Kuminga. They have more problems to solve. Buddy Hield needs to be minimized in terms of role and minutes for this team. And the small starting lineups have to stop. Those are 2 problems right there, 2 major problems that they have to overcome. Will Steve Kerr be able to figure it out? The sooner he figures it out, the more powerful the Warriors have a chance to be. Think about it. If you play less Hield, naturally, you're going to get more Guy Santos minutes. And the more Guy Santos plays, the more we're going to see very clearly that he's needed for this team. And then maybe you can solve the issue of no longer going with these tiny to too small lineups. That doesn't work. And then the final thing they can potentially fix up is realizing that with certain matchups, certain things, Looney cannot do well enough. Trace is going to have to enter the equation. And against a lot of these teams, Post is not going to be viable enough, and that is also going to call for the need of Trayce Jackson-Davis. The 2 centers that the Warriors are going to have to utilize in the playoffs if they want to be real are Loon and Trace. Post, I'm okay with spot minutes against certain matchups under certain circumstances, but he should not be above Trace in the rotation from a defensive standpoint. You're going to have to win with the greatness of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in terms of offense, because they don't have enough offense for this team to go around against playoff caliber teams. You just saw it tonight. Paz, not good enough. Moody, not good enough. Buddy Hield, nothing. And look at what Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry combined were able to do. That alone is good enough to carry the Warriors as long as they are good defensively. It's gotta be these guys and their segments and a bunch of defense around them, and that is what's going to allow the Warriors to compete for a title this year. Nothing else. There's too many holes within this roster for Steve Kerr to be so casual about and think that they can just overcome it. You're trying to cheat the game of basketball if you're Steve Kerr, and this is absolutely disgusting. The process is completely off. Obviously, there's a lot to prepare for here when it comes to the Houston Rockets. They are a huge team, and they are a fundamentally different team with Steven Adams in there. People keep saying like, oh, the Rockets are not serious. Oh, the Warriors have taken care of business against them before. While that's true, in a lot of those games, Tari Eason didn't even play, and Steven Adams wasn't even really a part of the rotation. And both of those guys were in the game the last time they played, and look what happened. The Warriors were too small, and the Rockets overwhelmed them. Not good enough. The Rockets have to be taken serious. They went on the run that they did for a reason. And if the Warriors want to ensure that they get out of the first round, they are going to have to get bigger. Before the playoffs come, I'm sure I'll make another video or two, so stay tuned for that. And again, at the end of the day, I'm grateful that the Warriors were able to get over this situation, the Steve Kerr situation, the rotational situations, and the ref situation. For these guys to get over all of those things was absolutely Herculean. So I appreciate those guys so much, and I know their viability, and that is why I am fighting for everything else around them to be working so that they have the proper conditions to properly compete for a title and not have to deal with complete and utter BS created by their own coach. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.